In the dark silence between stars, there drifts a vessel no chart dares to mark, no fleet dares to claim, and no empire dares to pursue. They call it the Black Ship. To some, it is a myth whispered in frightened tones across mess halls and outposts. To others, it is a curse that lingers in the aftermath of battles, a shadow against the burning wreckage of fleets that thought themselves invincible. But to humanity, it is more than a legend. It is a promise. A promise carved into steel and carried through eternity. The legacy of vengeance, unending, unstoppable, and unbound by time itself. The Black Ship was not born of peace. It was forged in despair and rage, when the stars themselves seemed to turn against mankind. Humanity had once believed it was small among the countless empires of the galaxy, a fragile people standing at the mercy of civilizations older, stronger, and crueler. And when the first wars came, when colonies burned and entire generations were erased in a tide of alien cruelty, mankind seemed destined to vanish. But humans are not a people who vanish. They adapt. They endure. And when pushed to the edge, they fight back. Out of that crucible of loss, the Black Ship was created, not just as a weapon, but as a vessel that carried the fury of a species unwilling to be broken. No one knows exactly when it first appeared. Some claim it emerged from a hidden shipyard deep within a forgotten system, built in silence by the survivors of Earth's last wars. Others say it was never built at all, that it rose from the wreckage of fallen fleets, pieced together by unseen hands, a ghost ship brought to life by the hatred of the dead. Whatever the truth, the Black Ship is real. Too many fleets have vanished in its wake. Too many empires whisper its name. Too many stars hold the debris of its passing. And wherever it goes, it leaves behind a single message, etched into the silence. Humanity endures. Its design defies reason. No one can say who commands it, or even if it is commanded at all. Some reports speak of a crew of veterans bound together by blood and vengeance, men and women who survived when no one else did. Others insist the ship is empty, guided only by an intelligence as cold and unyielding as the void itself. Its hull is a patchwork of scars, black steel laced with glowing veins of unknown power, as if the very fabric of space was stitched into its frame. And when its engines flare, it does not move like other ships. It cuts through space as though time bends to its will, arriving where no one expects, striking with precision, and vanishing before retaliation can come. But what makes the Black Ship truly terrifying is not its weapons, nor its speed, nor its mysteries. It is the weight of its mission. It does not fight for conquest. It does not take worlds. It does not raise banners. It exists for one purpose alone: to remind the galaxy that humanity remembers every wound, every injustice, every cruelty. The Black Ship is vengeance carried forward, a shadow of every battle lost and every loved one taken, and it does not forgive. There are stories told by alien captains who escaped its wrath, though few dare to admit they lived to see it. They describe the silence before it arrives, the sudden blackout of sensors, the crushing dread that seeps into their bones as the stars themselves seem to dim. Then comes the strike, flashes of impossible energy tearing through fleets, ships breaking apart as if their hulls were paper, and in the chaos the Black Ship drifting silently, watching, unhurried, inevitable. Survivors speak of voices echoing over comms, human voices cold and steady, declaring not victory but judgment. They say those voices carry no rage, only certainty, as if every destruction is simply justice being fulfilled. Yet even humanity does not fully claim the ship. Among the scattered colonies, whispers abound. Some say the Black Ship carries the souls of those lost in the wars, bound forever to guard their people from extinction. Others believe it is guided by descendants of Earth, those who vanished long ago and swore never to rest until humanity stood free among the stars. And there are darker tales, too, that the Black Ship is not mankind's protector, but its punishment. A ghost that will never let humanity find peace. For vengeance is a fire that burns without end, still. When the night is darkest, when enemy armadas descend upon defenseless colonies, the people look to the void and hope. For if the Black Ship comes, it means they are not forgotten. It means their cries are heard. And though it may not save everyone, Its presence alone is enough to strike terror into those who would seek to destroy mankind. Because the galaxy knows this, no empire has ever stood unbroken after facing the Black Ship. But there is a question that lingers, unspoken, yet ever present. How long can vengeance endure? Can a vessel forged from fury carry on forever, or does it bear a cost even humanity cannot bear? Some believe the Black Ship is not eternal, that one day it will falter, its power spent, its legacy fading into myth. Others believe it is not bound by time, that it will sail the stars long after empires have crumbled to dust, a ghost carrying mankind's vengeance across eternity itself. As the story begins, the galaxy stands on the edge of new wars. Empires rise again, old enemies whisper of conquest, and once more humanity finds itself watched with hungry eyes. The colonies are stronger now, scattered but resilient, yet their enemies grow bolder with each passing year. And through it all, the Black Ship drifts unseen, its course unknown, its purpose unchanged. Some call for it, others fear it, but all wonder the same thing. When the darkness comes again, will the Black Ship answer? Out there, beyond the edge of known space, a signal has been detected. It is faint, ancient, yet unmistakable. It carries the echo of humanity's lost wars, the cry of vengeance that once lit the stars in fire. And as the signal spreads, fear grips the galaxy. For it can only mean one thing. The Black Ship is stirring once more. But is it a promise of salvation for mankind, or a warning of a vengeance that even humanity cannot control? That is the question that hangs unanswered as the stars themselves hold their breath, waiting for the ghost vessel to rise again. Long before the signal returned, the galaxy had already learned to whisper the Black Ship's name in fear. Entire academies of alien tacticians studied its sudden appearances, searching for patterns that never revealed themselves. Fleets had been built with the sole purpose of hunting it, but each expedition returned broken, or not at all. To humanity, however, it was not just a legend. It was a part of their identity, a scar woven into their history, a reminder that no matter how small or scattered they had become, vengeance remained their constant companion. Children were raised on stories of the ghost vessel, some told with pride, others with dread. Even those who had never seen it in their lifetime carried the knowledge that somewhere in the darkness, the Black Ship still lingered. The story of how it came to be is tangled with humanity's greatest defeat. Generations ago, Earth had fallen. It had not been a sudden strike, but a slow bleed of wars, blockades, and betrayals. The great nations of mankind fought one another even as alien empires closed in, until at last the skies of Earth burned with enemy fire. Billions were lost, but not all. Refugees scattered to colonies hidden in asteroid belts, barren moons, and far-off systems. From that scattering came the dream of vengeance. Survivors did not simply want to live. They wanted to endure long enough to remind the galaxy that humanity could not be erased. Out of shattered fleets and desperate engineers, the Black Ship was born. It was unlike anything that had sailed before. Its engines were said to be powered not by ordinary fusion or antimatter, but by a hybrid technology salvaged from both human and alien wreckage. Every plate of its hull carried stories, salvaged armor from ships that had fought their last battle, reforged steel from orbital defense platforms that had fallen into the sea, scorched fragments of colony stations that had once sheltered the weak. To step aboard the ship, if indeed anyone still could, was to walk through a museum of humanity's scars. Every corridor was a tomb, every bulkhead a monument. Yet the ship did not merely drift. It fought. Records preserved in colony archives speak of its first vengeance, when an alien warlord led his fleet to hunt down the last survivors of Earth. Outnumbered 100 to 1, the Black Ship cut through his armada in silence, leaving nothing but drifting wreckage. No survivors, no mercy. That was the message humanity sent that day, and from that battle forward, no one could ever again claim mankind was defenseless. But the truth behind the crew remains uncertain. Some colonies insist that it is crewed by descendants of those who swore never to forget Earth's fall. Others argue that no living being could survive the centuries that have passed. They whisper that the ship is guided by intelligence beyond flesh, a mind made from the fragments of human rage, bound forever to its steel body. There are even stranger rumors, stories told by smugglers and wanderers who claim to have glimpsed the ship from afar. They say they heard voices when no comms were open, voices that spoke in languages both ancient and forgotten, calling them to remember, calling them to fight. Among the scattered human colonies, the Black Ship became both a warning and a hope. It appeared when colonies were on the brink of destruction, when alien fleets gathered to enslave or annihilate. Sometimes it arrived in time, scattering enemies with its sudden strikes. Other times it appeared only after the damage was done, drifting through the ruins like a mourner, leaving behind the wreckage of those who had dared to attack. It was never predictable, never bound to one place, but its presence left marks on every world it touched. Those who survived told their children that the Black Ship had come for them, and even if their homes were gone, they had not been abandoned. Yet the mystery deepened with each sighting. Colonies that tried to hail it received no answer. Those who tried to approach found their ships crippled by invisible forces, as if the very void itself rejected intruders. No one has ever claimed to step aboard and return. The Black Ship remained separate, distant, almost alive in its silence. And as the centuries turned, the legend only grew stronger. The alien empires feared it more than they admitted. Their fleets spoke of it in hushed tones, calling it the ghost vessel, the harbinger of humanity, the eternal judge. They told each other that it could not be destroyed because it was not real, that it was an echo of war given shape by fear. But in their councils and war rooms, they prepared strategies in secret, always calculating how they would respond if the Black Ship appeared in their battles. None ever succeeded. Now with the signal's return, unease spreads once more. In the colony halls, elders remember the old transmissions, the faint echo of a voice declaring humanity's vengeance, recorded in ancient wars. That same frequency now reaches across the void again, as though the ship is waking from a long slumber. The young do not know whether to feel hope or dread. For if the Black Ship stirs, it means the galaxy is once again turning toward war, and the enemies of humanity are not idle. Far from the fragile colonies, empires stir in the shadows. Old rivals who once lost fleets to the ghost vessel have not forgotten their shame. They have grown stronger, building weapons designed not just for conquest, but for extermination. They whisper that if the Black Ship rises again, this time they will find a way to end it. Some prepare traps, others lure with false distress signals, hoping to draw it into their snare. But none can say if such plans will succeed, for the Black Ship answers to no pattern, no bait, no threat. Within humanity itself, divisions grow. Some believe the Black Ship should be revered as sacred, a guardian sent to protect them. Others argue it is dangerous, that its endless mission of vengeance keeps humanity trapped in the past, unable to build a future. What if the ship's fury turns inward? What if one day it no longer fights for humanity but against it? The debates rise in council chambers and across colonies, yet no one has the power to decide. The Black Ship will do what it has always done: sail alone, in silence, following only its unknown purpose. Still, among the scattered people, there are those who feel a calling. Veterans of old battles, children who lost families to raids, dreamers who see visions of black steel and burning stars, they all claim the same thing. They feel as if the ship is waiting, as if somewhere out there, in the abyss between galaxies, the Black Ship listens, choosing the moment it will rise again. And now, with the signal alive, the galaxy holds its breath. Fleets prepare, colonies watch the skies, enemies gather their courage. For in the silence of space, one truth has never changed. When the Black Ship moves, it changes the fate of all who stand in its path. Yet no one knows where it will appear first. Will it come to a struggling colony, saving lives once more? Will it descend upon an enemy stronghold, delivering destruction? Or will it emerge in the heart of human space, not as savior but as judgment? That is the fear that grips every soul who gazes into the night sky, searching for the faint glimmer of black steel among the stars. For if the Black Ship's legacy endures, then vengeance still burns. And when vengeance moves, nothing in the galaxy remains untouched. The signals spread across the galaxy like a whisper too heavy to ignore. In the outer colonies, farmers and miners stopped their work and looked toward the sky, wondering if the legends were finally stirring back to life. In the great halls of alien empires, the news carried a different weight. Some rulers felt the chill of old defeats rising like ghosts, while others dismissed the fear, insisting the stories were exaggerations told by humans to protect their fragile pride. But deep inside, they all knew the black ship had never been defeated, and if the signal meant it was returning, no one could be certain whose star systems it would visit first. In the human colonies, the council debated endlessly. Some leaders urged unity, saying the signal was a gift, proof that their guardian still watched over them. They argued that the colonies should prepare to follow wherever the black ship led, to rally behind it and strike before alien powers grew bold again. Others urged caution. What if the ship was not a guardian but a weapon with no master? What if it had no loyalty to the living at all, carrying only the wrath of the dead? And if humanity placed its faith in such a ghost, would it ever be free from vengeance? These voices were quieter but filled with fear, and their doubts spread through the people like a shadow. Meanwhile, alien scouts began to move in secret. Across the border systems, fleets disguised their movements, slipping into human space to listen, to watch, to search for signs of the vessel. One empire, long humiliated by the black ship in an ancient battle, devoted entire fleets to the task of hunting it. Their leaders believed that if they could capture it or destroy it, they would finally erase their shame and crush humanity's growing spirit. They built weapons never seen before. Massive gravitational snares designed to trap anything, no matter how fast it moved, and energy cannons tuned to pierce the strongest shields. They told their people the black ship would never haunt their skies again. Yet in the quiet of their war councils, fear lingered. Among humans, ordinary lives carried on, but unease hung over everything. In one mining colony on the edge of known space, a group of workers swore they saw something drift past their sensors in the dark. It moved too silently, too deliberately to be any normal ship. They whispered that the black ship had passed them by unseen, leaving them untouched for reasons they could not explain. In another system, a trader's vessel was found adrift, its crew gone, its hull scarred by weapons no one could identify. Some said it was the work of pirates. Others swore it was the black ship, sending a warning to those who strayed too close to forbidden paths. Subplots began to grow in the shadows of this larger mystery. A young officer in one of the colonies had dreams of black corridors, of walking through a ship filled with echoes of voices she could not understand. She told no one at first, fearing she would be called mad, but each night the dreams grew stronger. In them she felt the weight of judgment pressing upon her, as if the ship itself was calling her name. At the same time, in the heart of an alien empire, a commander who had once fled from the black ship in his youth found himself plagued by visions of its return. He tried to bury the memory, but he could still hear the human voices that had spoken over the comms all those years ago. Voices that had told him not of conquest, but of justice. The shame of his survival burned him still, and now with the signal rising again, he wondered if the ship had come back for him. The tension was not just political or personal, it was spiritual. Across human space, preachers began to speak of the black ship as a divine hand, a vessel chosen to punish the wicked and protect the faithful. Their sermons filled halls with people desperate for meaning, people who wanted to believe that the ship's return was not a sign of endless war, but of hope. Yet others feared this devotion, warning that placing faith in vengeance could only lead to more destruction. The divide deepened. Was the black ship a savior, a ghost, or a curse? No answer came. In the shadows of all this, rumors began to spread of a secret movement within humanity. Not everyone wanted the black ship to return. Some feared its vengeance would ignite wars that the colonies could not survive. Whispers told of a group working in secret to find the ship and end it, to put the ghost of vengeance to rest before it dragged humanity into another cycle of blood. They were quiet, careful, moving like shadows through colonies, gathering data, chasing rumors. But their goal was clear. The black ship had to be stopped. The alien powers prepared their own answers. In one empire, a council of warlords met in secret. They argued over whether to strike the human colonies before the black ship could rise again, to crush the species once and for all. But others warned that any such act would only summon the ship faster. They feared it more than they feared humanity itself, for they had seen fleets of hundreds fall to its guns. Some of the younger warlords scoffed, claiming it was just an old tale, exaggerated beyond truth. Yet even they lowered their voices when speaking its name. Meanwhile, in the farthest reaches of space, deep space probes picked up anomalies, shadows that moved against starlight, distortions in time and gravity that should not exist. Some believed these were signs of the ship's engines, echoes of its passage. Others insisted they were natural events, but for those who believed, it meant only one thing. The Black Ship was no longer sleeping. Through all of this, humanity itself remained divided. Some prepared for war, building ships and weapons in the hope they could stand beside their ghostly protector when the time came. Others urged peace, fearing the Black Ship would draw enemies far greater than they could withstand. Still others believed they should seek it out, to find the truth of what it was and why it endured. But how could they search for something that moved beyond maps, that appeared only where it chose? That mystery gnawed at them as it gnawed at their enemies. The conflict was no longer just between humans and aliens. It was inside every heart that spoke the ship's name. Was it salvation or damnation? Did it exist to protect or to punish? And as the signal pulsed across the stars, carrying the memory of humanity's fall and rise, one thing grew clear to all who listened. The Black Ship was moving again. But toward what? No one could say. And in that silence, the galaxy held its breath, waiting for the moment when the darkness would break and the shadow of vengeance would return. The signal did not fade. It grew louder, echoing across channels that should have been dead for centuries. Colonies that had once thought themselves forgotten now received fragments of coded transmissions, words distorted, but familiar. Some claimed the voices were human, steady and cold, repeating messages of judgment. Others swore they heard something less human, an undertone of static like whispers from the dead. The mystery deepened with every passing day, and with it, tensions spread across the stars. The Human Council could no longer contain the fear and hope rising among their people. Fleets were ordered to stand ready, colonies reinforced, and every ship capable of combat was pulled from civilian routes. The Council argued late into the night about whether to reach out, to send a message into the void and call the Black Ship back to their side. But some warned that summoning it might also summon war greater than any they had known. They remembered the old stories, that wherever the Black Ship went, death followed. And it was never clear if its fury spared even those it claimed to defend. In the alien empires, the preparations were far darker. Old enemies gathered their fleets, rallying under banners of vengeance. They swore to their people that humanity had always been a dangerous seed, and that this ghost vessel was proof of it. If the Black Ship returned, they argued, it would mean humanity's vengeance was alive again, and if they did not strike first, it would strike them. Propaganda spread like fire, calling the ship a demon of the stars, a curse that had to be erased. For many alien civilizations, it was no longer a question of if they would fight, but when. In one border colony, a group of civilians watched from their station windows as their night sky filled with streaks of alien fleets moving silently just beyond sensor range. They whispered prayers to the Black Ship, hoping it would come before those fleets descended. But no salvation came, only the endless darkness of waiting. In another sector, a human patrol ship intercepted fragments of an alien broadcast, an open challenge, daring the Black Ship to reveal itself. The crew of that patrol ship listened in silence, their hands tightening on controls they knew would do nothing if the vessel answered. And then came the first undeniable sign. Deep space satellites detected a rift in the void, a distortion that did not belong. Light bent around something vast, a shadow without shape, drifting beyond the edges of known space. When the data was brought before the Council, the room fell silent. The readings matched nothing in their archives except for the scattered, inconsistent records of the Black Ship's appearances in the past. The counselors looked at each other, caught between awe and terror. If the ship had truly awakened, then the galaxy was about to change. Among ordinary people, rumors became certainty. Workers in asteroid mines left offerings of metal and fuel, believing the Black Ship might use them. Families in hidden colonies painted old symbols on their walls, claiming it would protect them if the ship passed near. Soldiers whispered vows to fight beside it if given the chance, while others admitted in secret they feared it more than the enemy fleets gathering at their borders. On the far side of the galaxy, the alien commander who had once fled from the Black Ship felt the weight of destiny pressing down on him. He could no longer escape the memory of that battle, the silence before it struck, the way it carved through his fleet as though it already knew every move he would make. He had lived in disgrace for decades, a survivor marked by shame. Now, with the signal rising, he convinced himself that the ship was coming for him. He began to gather his own fleet not for conquest, but for one final stand. He swore that this time he would not run. Meanwhile, the young human officer, haunted by dreams of black corridors, could no longer dismiss them as illusions. Her visions grew sharper, more detailed. She walked through shadowed hallways filled with whispers, saw flashes of battles she had never fought, and felt the presence of something vast watching her. She told no one, but deep down she began to believe she had been chosen. And if the Black Ship came, she would be drawn to it, whether she wished it or not. The hidden movement within humanity, those who feared the ship, grew bolder. They infiltrated communication networks, spreading doubts and warnings. They claimed the Black Ship was not a guardian, but a curse, one that had kept humanity chained to old hatred for centuries. They argued that if it returned, humanity's future would be lost to endless war. Quietly, they prepared to act, to find the ship and end it before it could begin again. Their plans were whispered in dark rooms, their agents moving among fleets and colonies, waiting for their moment. As tension grew, the galaxy itself seemed to hold its breath. Fleets massed on borders, their weapons armed but silent. Every ship that moved was watched, every signal tracked, every silence feared. The anticipation was unbearable. Somewhere in that silence, the Black Ship was moving. Some said it had already chosen its target. Others believed it was waiting for the perfect moment to reveal itself. No one could be certain, and that uncertainty tore at every decision, every plan, every heartbeat. Then the first confrontation came. In a remote sector, a human convoy was ambushed by an alien strike force, testing humanity's defenses. The convoy was nearly destroyed when, without warning, every alien ship fell dark. Survivors swore they saw a shadow drift through the wreckage, silent and immense, its black hull cutting across starlight. No one fired, no one moved, and then it was gone, vanishing into the void. The convoy limped home, carrying the tale, and with it, a spark of both hope and dread. The Black Ship had returned, but it had not spoken, had not declared its allegiance. The story spread faster than any fleet could travel. Across colonies and empires, the message was the same. The ghost vessel walks again. Humanity rejoiced, enemies panicked, but beneath it all, the question deepened. Was the ship a savior or an executioner? And what would it choose now that it had returned? Alien fleets began to converge, preparing for what they believed was inevitable. A battle that would decide not just humanity's fate, but the balance of the galaxy itself. The Human Council tried to hold its people together, but divisions sharpened. Some demanded they march behind the ship, others begged to distance themselves before its vengeance consumed them. Every decision felt like stepping toward fire. In the deepest silence of space, the Black Ship drifted, unseen, but felt. Its engines burned without sound, its shadow cutting through the void. It was not just a vessel. It was a storm waiting to break, and all who lived beneath the stars felt the weight of its approach. The climax drew closer with every heartbeat. Alien armadas massed like thunderclouds. Human fleets stood ready, though uncertain of what they fought for. Agents in the shadows prepared to betray or protect, uncertain themselves if their choices were salvation or doom. And through it all, the Black Ship moved unseen, its purpose hidden, its judgment unreadable. Every signal, every rumor, every vision pointed to one truth. The moment was coming when silence would end, and the galaxy would see the Black Ship in its full fury once more. The question was no longer if, but when, and who would survive the storm it carried across the stars of eternity. The galaxy waited for the storm, but when it came, it was not in the form anyone expected. The alien armadas gathered at the borders, bristling with weapons, ready to crush the colonies or trap the Black Ship if it dared to appear. The human fleets, smaller but hardened by centuries of survival, stood tense and silent, waiting for the signal that would ignite everything. But before the first shot could be fired, something else stirred in the darkness, something that was not part of any fleet. A series of faint transmissions began to bleed across the networks, layered beneath the Black Ship's own signal. At first, most dismissed it as interference, echoes caused by the sheer strength of the ghost vessel's presence. But then the fragments began to align into a pattern. Words, distorted and ancient, laced with human tones, but carrying an edge that felt alien. Analysts across colonies worked frantically to decode it, and when they did, the council fell into silence. The message was not a call for vengeance. It was a warning. And worse, it was not addressed to humanity. It was addressed to the enemies gathering against them. The message was simple. Do not follow. Do not interfere. The Black Ship's judgment is not for you. The implications rippled like shockwaves. For centuries, everyone had assumed the ship fought for humanity, its wrath aimed at those who dared to strike them down. But this new transmission hinted at something more complicated, perhaps darker. If its mission was not truly bound to humanity, then what was it bound to? Some counselors whispered that the Black Ship had always been guided by a larger design, one that humanity did not control. Others feared the unspoken truth, that perhaps humanity itself was only one part of its endless judgment and not exempt from it. The revelation sparked chaos. Colonies that had been ready to fight under its shadow suddenly hesitated. Could they trust a vessel that sent warnings to their enemies instead of rallying them? Was it possible the Black Ship's vengeance had grown beyond the wars that birthed it, now carrying out a mission that no living soul could understand? Alien empires seized on the doubt. Their leaders broadcast across systems, telling their people that humanity had lied, that the Black Ship was not their weapon, but a danger to all. They urged unity, not against humanity, but against the vessel itself. For the first time in living memory, rival empires began to set aside their grudges, driven by fear of the same shadow. Entire fleets that had once sworn to destroy one another now turned their eyes toward the same goal. The end of the Black Ship. Meanwhile, in human space, tension split the people further. A growing faction argued that they should cut ties with the ship, prove to the galaxy that they were not bound to its vengeance. They wanted peace, even if it meant standing alone. Another faction argued the opposite, that the ship's warning was a sign of deeper protection, that it was guarding humanity from dangers they could not yet see. To them, the Black Ship was still the legacy of Earth's fall, still the embodiment of their unbroken spirit. To abandon it now would be betrayal. The young officer, haunted by dreams of black corridors, felt the conflict more than anyone. Her visions changed. No longer did she walk alone in the shadowed halls. Now she heard voices clearer than ever, whispering not just of vengeance but of choice. They asked her questions she could not answer, pressing her with the weight of something vast and eternal. She began to fear that she was not simply dreaming, that the Black Ship itself was speaking to her. And if it was, then why her? Why now? Far away, the disgraced alien commander preparing his last stand also felt the shift. He had sworn the Black Ship was coming for him, but now he began to believe something else. Perhaps he was not its enemy at all. Perhaps he was meant to be part of its judgment, a piece in whatever design it followed. The thought terrified him, yet it also gave him a strange sense of purpose. He gathered his forces not only to fight, but to wait, to see if the ship would call to him the same way it seemed to call to others. The hidden movement within humanity, those who sought to destroy the ship, seized the moment. To them, the transmissions proved everything they had feared. The Black Ship was no guardian. It was something far older, far more dangerous. They argued that humanity was only being used, that its vengeance was nothing but fuel for a vessel that served a greater, unknowable cause. They redoubled their efforts, seeking out ancient archives, hidden records, anything that could reveal where the ship had come from and how it could be ended. For the first time, they began to believe they had found a clue, a system long abandoned, where ruins of the first great battle still lingered. If the ship was truly born there, then perhaps it could also be undone there. The stakes rose higher as the signal pulsed louder, clearer, now reaching systems thought lost. In the ruins of dead worlds, old machines woke, sending out beacons that aligned with the ship's path. Across the galaxy, people began to understand that the Black Ship was not wandering aimlessly. It was moving with purpose, tracing a path that no one yet understood. Every empire, every colony, every fleet now had to make a choice: follow that path or stand in its way. Fear turned into urgency. Alien armadas abandoned their waiting lines and began to push forward, desperate to intercept the ship before it reached its destination. Human fleets scrambled to keep up, torn between defending their colonies and chasing the shadow. The void between stars grew crowded with warships, all moving toward the same unknown point. Suspense thickened with every passing hour. Then came the second twist, something no one expected. As the fleets converged, new signals emerged, faint but undeniable. They were not from the Black Ship, they were from another, a second shadow, smaller, less powerful, but built of the same impossible design. Its hull reflected no light, its engines bent time itself, and its signal carried the same cold certainty. The galaxy froze in terror. There was not one Black Ship. There were two. No one could explain it. Some said the second was a copy, a failed attempt to replicate the original. Others claimed it was a fragment, a piece that had split off long ago. The most fearful whispered that the Black Ship had never been alone, that others had always existed, drifting unseen, waiting for the right moment to rise. Whatever the truth, the arrival of a second ghost vessel shattered every assumption. If there was more than one, then humanity's legacy was not unique. The Black Ship's vengeance was not just theirs. It was something far greater, something that stretched across eternity. The galaxy no longer faced a single enemy or savior. It faced the possibility of a fleet of ghosts, each carrying its own judgment. The tension reached its peak. Fleets braced for war, leaders demanded answers, and whispers of panic spread among the people. Humanity itself was torn apart by fear and awe, caught between loyalty, dread, and the impossible question of what the Black Ship truly was. And as both shadows drifted closer to their unknown destination, the galaxy understood that whatever came next would change everything forever. No one slept, no one dared to hope, and no one knew whether the storm that was coming would leave anything standing in its wake. The Black Ship's legacy had grown into something far larger than anyone had imagined. And now, standing at the edge of the climax, the only certainty was that the stars themselves would soon burn with its judgment. The galaxy braced for war as the two ghost vessels moved through the void. The first was the Black Ship, the eternal shadow of humanity's vengeance, its name carved into centuries of fear. The second was newer, smaller, yet it carried the same impossible silence, the same distortion of space, the same promise of judgment. No one knew where it had come from or why it had revealed itself now, but its presence shattered the fragile balance. The fleets of empires, human and alien alike, raced to intercept, yet none dared to be the first to strike. When the ships finally came into sight, they did not fire. They drifted through the center of a system long abandoned, where broken planets hung in fragments around a dying star. Here, in the ruins of forgotten wars, the vessels met. Their signals pulsed across the galaxy, louder than ever before. Words emerged, fragments of human voices, overlapping, heavy with certainty. They spoke of vengeance, of justice, but not only for humanity. They spoke of the fallen of all species, of countless wars where the innocent had been crushed beneath empires. The Black Ship had never been a weapon for one people. It had been forged as something greater. It was judgment itself, carrying the weight of every lost life. The revelation split humanity. Some wept, believing their guardian had always stood for something larger, that their suffering had not been forgotten. Others felt betrayed, realizing they had never truly owned the vessel, that their vengeance was only one thread in its endless tapestry. Alien fleets that had once prepared to fight now hesitated, hearing their own dead echoed in the voices. Could it be that the ghost did not come only for humanity's enemies, but for all who had spilled blood unjustly? But hesitation gave way to panic when the second ship turned not against alien fleets, but against the first. Without warning, it opened fire. The void blazed with energy unlike anything seen before, tearing through the silence. The black ship answered, its guns striking with precision, and for the first time in history, the galaxy saw the ghost fight itself. The spectacle was blinding. Time seemed to twist as the ships moved faster than thought, their weapons tearing through the ruins of planets, shattering moons into dust. Every fleet held position, powerless, watching as two impossible vessels clashed in a storm of fire. The human officer, haunted by dreams, felt the pull stronger than ever. She collapsed aboard her ship as the voices filled her mind, showing her visions of the battle not as machines but as wills, locked against each other. She understood then what few could. This was not a battle of ships, but of purpose. One vessel carried the legacy of judgment as it had always been, a force beyond empires. The other sought something different. It wanted to break free from that endless mission, to end the cycle of vengeance once and for all. They were not enemies in form, but in meaning. One fought to preserve eternal judgment. The other fought to end it. Across the galaxy, the fleets felt the weight of choice pressing upon them. If they fired upon one, they might decide the future of all life. But who was right? To side with the first was to embrace judgment without end, a universe where vengeance never slept. To side with the second was to risk chaos, to end the shadow that had kept empires in fear for centuries. No one moved, torn between salvation and destruction. The alien commander, who had lived in shame for decades, felt his path clear. He turned his fleet not toward humanity, but toward the second vessel. His voice shook as he spoke to his crew, confessing that he could not bear to live in a galaxy ruled by endless judgment. If there was even a chance that the cycle could end, he would fight for it. His fleet surged forward, firing into the chaos, aiding the smaller ghost. For the first time, an alien armada stood against the black ship, not out of fear, but out of choice. The battle reached its peak. The black ship tore through the traitor fleet with merciless efficiency, but in doing so left itself vulnerable. The second vessel struck, tearing into its hull, scattering fragments of ancient steel into the void. For a moment, the impossible seemed possible. The black ship faltered. Its engines dimmed, its signal flickered. Entire galaxies held their breath, and then came the twist no one expected. From the wreckage of both vessels, fragments of signal converged into a single pulse. It was not words, but a vision, projected into every mind across the stars. They saw humanity's fall, Earth burning, colonies scattered. They saw alien empires rising and collapsing in endless cycles of cruelty. They saw every war, every massacre, every child lost to the greed of the powerful. And in that vision they understood. The black ship had never been about vengeance alone. It was a mirror, a reminder of what they all carried, human or alien alike. Its purpose was not to destroy, but to force the galaxy to see itself, to face the weight of its own violence. As the vision faded, the black ship reignited. But instead of striking its rival, it turned its guns outward, toward the fleets of both human and alien empires. Not to destroy, but to fire warning shots that lit the void with light brighter than any sun. The message was clear. Judgment was not for one ship to decide. Judgment was for the living to choose. The second vessel ceased its attack and drifted beside the first, their signals aligning in harmony for the first time. The galaxy fell silent. Armadas that had gathered for war now stared into the blinding light of their own reflection. Leaders who had built their power on conquest suddenly found their people unwilling to march. Soldiers who had sworn to fight now questioned why they fought at all. Humanity, once fractured by doubt, found itself unified in something new. Not vengeance, but awareness. The black ship's legacy had changed, yet just as peace seemed possible, the unexpected came. The two vessels did not remain. They vanished together, slipping into the void without a trace. Their signals cut off, leaving nothing but silence. The fleets that had watched them stood stunned. Leaders left without guidance. People left with only the vision of their own history to haunt them. But in the silence, whispers began to spread. Some claimed the ships had merged, becoming something greater. Others believed they had gone to rest, their mission fulfilled. Still others feared they had only withdrawn, waiting for the next cycle of war to begin. Humanity and alien empires alike now faced the same choice. live in the shadow of the Black Ship's lesson, or repeat the violence that had summoned it in the first place. The human officer who had carried the dreams awoke from her collapse with one final message lingering in her mind. It was not words, but a feeling, a weight lifted, a chance given. She did not know if she had been chosen or simply witnessed what all were meant to see. But she knew the galaxy would never again be the same. The climax left the stars trembling, the balance of power broken, the certainty of vengeance replaced with something far more uncertain. For though the Black Ship had vanished, its legacy endured, and in that legacy lay both the promise of peace and the threat of a vengeance that could rise again. If the galaxy failed to learn from the ghosts it had been forced to face. And so the story did not end with destruction, but with silence. A silence that carried a question no one could answer. When the Black Ship returns again, will it come as judge or as reminder? And which will the galaxy deserve? The silence after the battle lingered like a weight on every world. Across human colonies and alien empires alike, the memory of the vision burned brighter than the flashes of the Black Ship's guns. People who had once spoken of vengeance now spoke of consequence. Leaders who had risen on fear found their words hollow. The two ghost vessels were gone, vanished into the abyss as suddenly as they had appeared, but their legacy remained not as a myth or a weapon, but as a mirror held up to the galaxy itself. In the human council, there was no cheering, no declarations of victory. Instead, there was quiet reckoning. For generations, they had placed their survival in the shadow of the Black Ship, believing it fought for them alone. Now they understood that it had been more than a guardian of humanity. It had been judgment carried across the stars, a voice reminding them of what happens when vengeance becomes endless. The younger counselors argued this was their chance to build something new, to prove they could live without the shadow of the ghost vessel. The older ones, hardened by wars, feared the lesson would fade too quickly, that without the Black Ship, the empires would rise to crush them again. Ordinary people, however, carried the vision differently. Miners, farmers, traders, and soldiers spoke of what they had seen. They remembered the cries of not only their own fallen, but of alien children, alien families, alien voices lost to war. For the first time, humanity began to see itself not as a victim alone, but as part of a galaxy that had suffered together. That shift was small, fragile, but it was powerful. Stories spread from colony to colony of families refusing to arm themselves out of fear, instead choosing to strengthen ties with neighbors and former enemies. Not all accepted it, but the seed was planted. Among the alien empires, the impact was even more profound. Warlords who had built fleets to conquer suddenly faced populations unwilling to march. The vision had shown their people the truth, that every empire had blood on its hands. Protests rose on worlds where war had been a way of life. Some rulers tried to silence the unrest, but the memory of the Black Ship's warning was not so easily forgotten. Even in the most ruthless empires, whispers grew that perhaps their survival did not lie in conquest, but in restraint. The disgraced alien commander, who had chosen to side with the second vessel, became something unexpected. Though his fleet had been shattered, survivors carried his story home. They spoke of his decision not to serve fear, but to stand for change. He had believed the cycle of judgment could end, and though he fell in battle, his name was carried by those who saw him not as a coward, but as a symbol of defiance against endless war. His legacy spread quietly, giving courage to others who wished to step out of the old cycle of vengeance. For humanity, the greatest change came from within. The hidden movement that had sought to destroy the Black Ship found their purpose changed. Where once they had worked in secret to end its shadow, now they spoke openly, not of destruction, but of release. They argued that the Black Ship had given them a chance to walk free, that vengeance had been handed back to the living to shape. To some, their words felt like betrayal. To others, they sounded like hope. In time, they became part of the debate, pushing humanity toward reflection rather than reliance on a ghost. The young officer who had been haunted by dreams awoke changed as well. She never heard the voices again after the two vessels vanished, but the weight of their presence remained in her heart. She had seen the purpose behind their clash, the struggle between eternal judgment and the chance to end it, and in the silence that followed, She felt both loss and relief. She returned to her colony, leaving behind her commission, speaking not as a soldier but as a witness. Her words carried weight not because of rank, but because she had lived the visions and her people listened. Over time, colonies that had once feared being abandoned came together more strongly. Without the Black Ship as a looming guardian, they turned to one another, forging bonds of trade, of defense, of shared survival. They could no longer wait for a ghost to answer their cries. They had to become the answer themselves. The first fragile treaties were written not with grand empires, but between small settlements, between communities that had once looked only inward. It was not peace, not yet, but it was the beginning of something more than survival. The galaxy beyond humanity remained tense, but quieter than before. Empires that had once prepared for war withdrew their fleets, uncertain of what might come if they tested the lesson too soon. Some believed the Black Ship still lingered, invisible, watching. Others convinced themselves it was gone forever. Either way, fear of its return was enough to hold them back, at least for a time. And in that time, a fragile space opened, an opportunity for something the galaxy had rarely known, the chance to choose peace instead of war. Yet the shadow of the Black Ship's legacy never fully faded. The vision it left behind was too vivid, too heavy to vanish. It became part of human stories, part of alien stories, told around fires, written in songs, remembered in quiet moments. For some, it was a warning to stay humble. For others, it was a call to justice. And for a few, it was still a promise that if they strayed too far into cruelty, the Black Ship might rise again to remind them. The final twist came not in fire or destruction, but in discovery. Months after the vessels vanished, explorers stumbled upon a faint signal buried in the ruins of a dead world. It was weaker than before, almost an echo, but it carried a message not meant for fleets or empires. It was simple, human, spoken in a voice that could have belonged to anyone. The future is yours. Do not waste it. That message spread slowly, almost quietly, compared to the storms that had come before. But it carried more weight than any battle. It told humanity and the galaxy alike that the legacy of the Black Ship was no longer about fear. It was about choice. For centuries, the ghost vessel had carried their vengeance, their pain, their judgment. Now it was in their hands. The galaxy moved forward with hesitation, but also with a sense of possibility. Humanity rebuilt not as the broken survivors of Earth's fall, but as a people who had seen their reflection and chosen to stand. The alien empires, fractured by doubt, faced their own reckoning, unsure whether to cling to the past or step into something new. And though uncertainty remained, one truth held firm. The Black Ship's legacy would endure, not in the steel of a ghost vessel, but in the memory it left across the stars. In the end, it was not vengeance that defined them, but the lesson of what vengeance costs. Humanity had been given a gift, not of endless protection, but of perspective. And as they looked to the stars, no longer waiting for a ghost to save them, they understood that their future would be written not by a ship, but by their own hands. The Black Ship was gone, but its shadow lingered, carried in every story, every choice, every star. And perhaps one day when the galaxy forgot, it would return. Not as a weapon, but as a reminder that even in the darkest times, the legacy of judgment, hope, and humanity's endurance would carry on across the stars of eternity.